As Christian educators, our job is so much more than just teaching subjects, right? We're actually shaping how our students see the entire world. But let's be honest, there are a lot of competing narratives out there. So what's the foundational story we're telling? Today, we're going to dig into that grand narrative, the framework that gives real meaning and purpose to everything we do in the classroom.
I think this is the question that keeps a lot of us up at night. Our students are just swimming in a sea of different stories, narratives that tell them who they are, what their purpose is, and where they should put their hope. We have to offer them a better story, something that can act as an anchor in the storm. So, let's explore that foundational answer together.
All right, so here's our game plan. We'll kick things off by really defining the challenge we're all facing as educators. Then, we'll journey through the 4 key acts of God's big story: creation, the fall, redemption, and finally, restoration. And then we'll get super practical and look at how this whole narrative can actually transform our teaching.
Okay, let's make this real. I want you to imagine a 10th grade social studies teacher. We'll call him Robert. His story, I think, really highlights the core challenge that all of us are up against in our classrooms every single day.
So Robert keeps hearing the same ideas from his students. The world's just an accident, and the biggest problem we face is oppression. And he knows, look, there's a kernel of truth in that, but they're incomplete stories. They're diagnosing the symptoms, but totally missing the disease. His students desperately need a bigger, more coherent story to make sense of it all.
And these are the kinds of stories that are vying for our students' hearts and minds. Each one offers a different answer to life's biggest questions. We can't just ignore this stuff. We have to counter these narratives with one that's way more compelling, one that actually has better explanatory power for the world they're living in.
And this is the key. The Christian faith isn't just a list of rules or a ticket to heaven. It is an all-encompassing story, this grand narrative that gives a much more robust and satisfying explanation for the world as it really is. It gets to the root of the problem, while all these other stories are just, trimming the branches.
So, what is this better story? Well, it all starts at the very beginning. Let's dive into the first act, because this is what lays the foundation for our identity, our value, and our entire purpose.
The Bible kicks off with this simple yet incredibly profound truth. We are not a cosmic accident. Our world didn't just happen. We are the intentional, purposeful work of a loving Creator. And that's our starting point.
Our story begins with goodness. It begins with purpose. Because our students are made in God's image, they have inherent, absolutely immeasurable worth. They were literally created for relationship, for creativity, for stewardship, a world that was designed with harmony and beauty.
But a quick look around tells us that's not the world we live in now, is it? The harmony is broken. The beauty is stained. And that brings us to the second act of our story, the fall. This is where we find the real explanation for the brokenness our students see and feel every single day.
This is the pivot point of all human history. Adam and Eve, tempted by the serpent, chose their own wisdom over God's clear command. And this one act of disobedience, this choice to define good for themselves rather than trust God's perfect word, it had immediate and catastrophic consequences. In an instant, everything changed. That perfect relationship with God was broken, and it led to shame and fear. Our relationships with each other were fractured. Even creation itself was cursed. This is the true source of the world's problems. It's not just about broken systems, it's about the brokenness in every single human heart, what theologians call original sin.
But even in that dark moment of rebellion, God did not abandon us. He didn't leave us to our brokenness. He immediately began to unfold this incredible plan for redemption. Hope was not lost.
Right there in Genesis 3, God gives the very first promise of the gospel. He talks about a future Savior, the seed of the woman, who would come and deliver a fatal blow to the serpent. I mean, this is the very first hint that God Himself would provide the victory over sin and evil.
And that promised Savior is Jesus. His life, His death, and His resurrection, that is the central event of all human history. He is God's definitive, final answer to the problem of the fall.
You see, Jesus lived the perfect, obedient life we couldn't, and He died the death that our sin deserved. But it didn't end there. His resurrection proved that sin and death do not get the final say. Through Him, we can be forgiven, we can be restored, we can be made new.
But redemption isn't just about saving our souls so we can go to heaven one day. It's the beginning of a cosmic renewal. It's like a down payment on our ultimate, unshakable hope for the future.
Now, this is such a crucial concept for our students to grasp. We live in this tension of the already but not yet. Christ's victory is already won, but the war isn't totally over. We still see the pain and the effects of the fall all around us, but we live with this confident hope of a future where God will make all things new.
Now this is the Christian hope. It's not about escaping this world, it's about the complete renewal of everything. It's the healing of creation, the mending of all broken relationships, and the final, visible victory of God's kingdom. Christ's resurrection is the first taste, the first fruits of this incredible promise.
So, how in the world do we translate this profound theology into our day-to-day teaching? How does this 4-act story actually shape what we do on a Monday morning?
Well, this framework is incredibly practical. Think about a history class. We use the fall to explain not just that systems are broken, but why, because they're built by fallen people. We see creation's goodness in the truth that all people are made in God's image, the brokenness of sin in something like slavery, the hope of redemption in the fight for justice, and our work for restoration in building a more equitable society. This is how we challenge those false narratives and raise students to be agents of God's coming kingdom.
Ultimately, this grand narrative gives meaning and hope and purpose to our entire educational mission. It reminds us that everything we do, from teaching algebra to coaching soccer, it's all part of a much bigger story that ends in worship.
So let's end with that question. As you're planning your next lesson, as you're interacting with your next student, just think about it. How can you center your teaching on the one true story that really, truly changes everything?